Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Limitless Leaders monthly webinar, where we talk about all things leadership, very topical sessions that are designed to help you navigate today's workplace. And tonight we have three very special panelists joining us as we talk about our workplace. Is it a workplace or a war zone? That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And I'm going to allow our panelists to introduce themselves. I will start, first of all, with Antanette Anderson, who is a trained mental health therapist. Thank you for joining. I think this is your first time with us, right?
Yes, it is my first time. I'm Antanette Anderson. As Simmone said, trained mental health therapist with over 25 years in the field. I am founder of A.S. Anderson Consultancy Services, Mental Health and Wellness, and we specialize in loss and grief, everything, because that's the best way to put it. We work with companies as well as individuals. I do regular therapy as well. It is indeed a pleasure to be here tonight. Um, now that I've stepped out of working for others and just working for myself. So this is a very interesting topic, and I'm looking forward to sharing as well. Thank you all.
Yes, we're looking forward to your insights and helping us to navigate, when we are in a toxic environment, what are some things that we need to do? What are some things that we need to look out for? So we are very, very excited to hear from your professional vantage point on how to deal with this. We also have joining us two seasoned, I will say, HR professionals. And ladies first. So I will go with Nikia Forbes. Please introduce yourself to our audience tonight.
Good night, everyone. My name is Nikia Forbes. I've been in the HR field for over 18 years. I currently work for a regulatory body in the Bahamas, and I'm happy to be here to join in the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And to our gentleman in the room, Ricardo Mitchell.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be a part of this panel and to be speaking on this topic along with who I believe to be amazing and great speakers and experts in the field. So my name is Ricardo Mitchell. I've been practicing HR on and off for a period of time, but consistently for the last about 7, 8 years. Um, and I'm happy to participate and contribute. So I can't wait to dive into the conversation.
Yes, really looking forward to it. And I think I'll just round robin with each of you to tell me your insights on today's workplace, because I think more often than not, we are hearing more and more what I would call horror stories about people's experiences in the workplace. People are referring to the workplace as toxic. You only have to go on social media, you go on TikTok, on Instagram, people are doing memes about it. People are just saying they're talking about their bad bosses and the mental health issues that they're seeing in today's workplace. From your vantage point and experience, how would you describe the workplace today? And I'll start with you, Ricardo, since you were the last speaking.
All right. I think I would take this question specifically from the topic as relates to workplace or war zone. I find in many cases, especially working in employee relations, that leaders are acting, I would say, most times from a place of comfort, but also from a place of where they're familiar. That sometimes doesn't necessarily aligns with the company's policies, procedures as it relates to how we interact with each other. And I've seen so many times, even a particular example of a leader who, in a past place where I worked, um, pretty much the entire team, if not all, the majority of these individuals would have lodged a complaint against a particular leader. And we did the investigation. We met with the team. We, pull out the themes, and then we met with the leader. And something very interesting stood out to me about that conversation. The leader indicated that I would have been a leader in a previous place where a particular leadership style was the way we led our team members. And in the absence of the necessary training for this company, I resorted or revert to that, which does not align with what the company we were at was looking for. So I think training definitely can have a huge impact on how we change that particular narrative about how today's workplace culture is set up.
I agree. Nikia.
Yes, I agree as well. And then it also starts with the tone at the top is what we tolerate in our organization. Some organizations, they're in an environment where it's high pace, it's high volume, so it's a lot of directives and not much care for the employee, just pushing out the numbers and, no emphasis on the values within the organization. So I have a family member right now experiencing challenges with her manager, and when I hear the stories, I just cringe because I can't believe that this happens in the workplace, but it does so often. But it's definitely based on the culture of the organization, what they allow to happen. We have to make sure that we are putting processes in place to create the culture that we want to see. And it starts at the top, the tone at the top.
Definitely.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the things that we tolerate, as you talked about, right? The things that you allow, and those things start from leadership. Absolutely. Antanette, what's your take from a mental health therapist standpoint? I know you do a lot of work with grief, and some of this actually can, create grief, and other emotions, other things that we see going on. So what's been your take from this vantage point?
Sure. I've come to this understanding of when I worked background. Prior to going off to school, I worked private sector only. That's all I knew. Came back from school, worked in the public sector, worst mistake of my life. That's how I see it. Awful all around. I feel like a lot of managers come off as territorial. How dare you? Who do you think you are? And so with that mentality, someone young, someone a little bit more educated is already has a target on their back. It's automatic. You are targeted because of your knowledge, your know-how, your background, what you did prior to coming back home. And that's disheartening for, we talk about the brain drain. Um, we talk about people staying and not coming back. But when there's an understanding of what you're coming back to, that's hard. The thought of that is hard. And so actually coming back into that, yeah, it causes a whole lot of unnecessary, unwanted, unneeded stress. And that plays on it. It plays on, and then it affects. It's a trickle-down effect. So mental health wise, people are set up almost for failure, if that makes sense. And it's unfortunate that it's that way.
Yeah, you're right. And I don't even know if we can even say now that it's like a public sector, private sector thing. I mean, it's just everywhere. It's sad that, as you talk with professionals, and I'm finding that, you have persons who may have started at a young age, and they continue to remain hopeful, right? And so they put in the time and they wait and they wait and they wait and the years are rolling by and it's like the same scenario. And just today, I was having some conversations and it's the same thing where people are feeling like, we're doing all this work. It doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. I don't feel appreciated. Um, all of the things that you're talking about, just people just not feeling like I'm contributing to my personal best. What would you say are some of the early warning signs that a workplace is shifting to a war zone? So conflict is one thing that we want to focus on, but other elements of toxicity that comes up in an organization. But let's start there. What are some early signs that you've seen? I know, Ricardo, you have worked in the employee relations space where you have to deal with mediating a lot of those issues that may arise either between colleagues or between colleagues and their managers. So, what are some of the early signs that you've seen that you can tell, okay, this is not going in a good direction?
I think if employers pay attention, the signs show themselves, I would say over time in some instances, but you see it like the quiet employee who all of a sudden starts to raise their voice. They become vocal. You could tell their frustration. People start snapping at each other, don't ask me nothing. You ain't my boss. You can't tell me what to do. Just for routine, regular, run-of-the-mill things. Interactions change. Then there's favoritism. And unfortunately, it happens in the workplace. It shouldn't. You could tell when the boss, but he may say curry favor. And so Ricardo and Simmone could do whatever they want to do. They could go when they want to come. They could go when they want to go. They come back when they want to come back. They take
Tuesday. They used to say that about us for true.
Oh, for real? See that? And on the other hand, Antanette and Nakia just sitting there and we just toiling and we just working, and the slightest thing that is done, you get pounced on. You get pounced on from management. And so that starts when you see your quiet employee raising their voice, when you see your quiet employee disengaging, when you see your good employee saying, I ain't doing this, then I think managers know. Some just don't care, but they know. They could tell something shift. This person who is consistent will do what they need to do. All of a sudden, ain't look like they interested. And that is because it's not, the workplace isn't, when you see your workplace isn't fair. Workplace should be fair to everybody. So Ricardo and Simmone, y'all can't be going to lunch for 3 hours and coming back and everybody else sitting there doing their work. And then it gets thrown on those who work hard, those who show themselves to be diligent.
I feel attacked. I don't know about you, Ricardo.
It was the other way around. We were the ones. But from where I sat, I think some early signs that I saw, honestly, you would find that absenteeism went up, right? Employees start calling in a lot more. And it's not for physical sickness, honestly, right? A lot of that was emotional and psychological. You find that breakdown in communication, simple things just set individuals off. In addition to that, high turnover. You start to see people resigning, and these are some of the positions and roles where you would say people would stay long term, in certain positions because it's a good pay, etc. But these people are resigning. And also there are signs in the exit interviews, right? Where people are free to say what they want to say. And which brings me to another point why I guess we'll talk about it later on, why it's important for us as leaders to create safe spaces for people to speak out and to speak up. And when they do, for us to act on that information. And so you find that in those exit interviews, people are saying the candid truth, right? Because there's nothing holding me to this place anymore. And sometimes it's a shocker, and sometimes it's just evidence of what you believe. And so it's also important for us to compile that data and report that so that leadership, to Nikia's earlier point, from the top can see what's happening in the operation and hopefully realize that we're losing our best talent and we got to do something quickly. So those are some of the signs that I saw, navigating that space when you can tell that departments, units, and the company is going in a particular direction.
Um, if possible, what about, and I know I'm not trying to lead, but there are companies that don't do the exit interview.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They miss some valuable information, and a lot of times, if you're not gathering the data, um, you can be saying or reporting that things going well, but where's that information coming from? Is it from your point of view? Is it from the surveys you conducted with team members? And so it's important for us to constantly do those kinds of checks and find a variety of ways to get that information, from surveys, exit interviews. In some cases you may get valuable information from stay interviews, right? But one-on-one conversations, spot checks, working with units. And I did all of that before. Just went to the unit and worked with a group of people. And you hear a lot when you are in that space and in their space, and you see the interactions, like the real raw interactions between management, team members, and team members to team members, right? You see all of that in a very raw way. So it is important for us to, like I say, identify those things, but those are some of the signs that I noticed very early on, navigating that space.
Yes, thank you for those. So, Nakia, I want to ask you then, what role does leadership play in either escalating or resolving conflict? Leadership style, leadership communication, leadership behavior. What is the role of leadership in escalating and resolving conflict?
So definitely leadership should be fair and consistent in their approach with addressing these situations. Like I said earlier, not letting it just go by, just not letting it die away. I think I had a situation. I went to an organization, got a team member who had a issue that I guess festered for about 2 years. Nobody addressed it. And the behaviors continued. So in that particular situation, I was able to bring the parties together and have the conversation. I think a lot of times we just don't want to have the difficult conversations because of maybe who the person is, who they are connected to, especially if you're working in, maybe a government organization. But it's just making sure that you're fair, you're consistent in your approach and how you address the situation. You have a thorough investigation where you let all sides be heard. And your process and your policies for grievances should be clear and followed through.
Yeah, we're going to talk about those processes in a little bit. But you raised a point, right, of not having these important conversations, I'll call them, right? Not wanting to address certain things. And that comes from a particular place. I found in a lot of instances that leaders don't know how to, right? So it either is they don't want to, for whatever reason. I think sometimes they're afraid of the confrontation for various reasons, right? They're afraid of not being kind of liked, right? So you have leaders who want to be liked. And so they don't want to confront those things. And perhaps these people they may be having friendly interactions. So now that I have to put my foot down, I can't do that with my friends, right? Or the people that I go socializing with and things like that. So it becomes more cloudy when I'm now expected to be a leader in this situation. Or, as I mentioned before, I just don't like confrontation, right? I don't like that feeling. I don't like when I walk in the room, people stop talking, or somebody is visibly not speaking to me anymore because I had to have a difficult conversation with them. Or more often than not, I've found they just don't know how to approach it. What are some of the things that HR can do to help in situations like that?
I want to jump in on that because I spent a lot of time in that space there. And you are very much correct that in many cases, leaders don't know how to navigate those conversations. And in some cases, yes, because they are very close and friends with the individual, it's difficult to have them. So, what I found worked for me, especially when supporting leaders in the organization, is with guiding them on how to prepare for the conversation and how to navigate the conversation and what are some potential questions or concerns that the employee would raise and how they can respond to those if they do come up. And then in the initial state of, let's say, a few of them, sitting with them, to kind of ensure that it goes well and I can hop in as necessary, but allowing them to lead the conversation. And you find that with those notes and those pointers, they do pretty well with the conversation because they have a script, right? They know they're focused. This is what we're here to address. Anything outside of that, we can reschedule where they can prepare for the conversation. And so ensuring that they're very prepared for the conversation and giving them tips on how to navigate having the conversation, the tone to help. Can this conversation happen in the office or should it happen somewhere else, right? If I come to your office, I'm going to feel very uptight, probably, depending on what the situation is. It doesn't necessarily have to be in an office, right? It can be somewhere else. And so giving them that bit of information and support, I think works well.
I agree. I agree. The support, I think the guidance, no one wants to feel inadequate. And so I think that's a lot of reasons why people may not step forward, people may not ask for help. But if they feel that it's a safe space, then they will be more inclined to accept the help, accept the guidance. And especially when they do it and it works, then they become a believer, so to speak, right? Nikia, oh, sorry, you wanted to add something,
Yeah,
Ricardo?
because in most cases you find that leaders default, that's HR's responsibility, right? And a particular training that I used to conduct with leaders is
Yeah.
having those crucial conversations, right? Um, and feedback, workplace coaching, and empowering them to have those conversations because these are the people that you lead, right? And if I have to step in every time to have those conversations, will they really respect you? I mean, if they will say you got to call HR, like you always have to call HR, you can't talk to us about anything. And so empowering leaders with the necessary training and tools and skills so that they can navigate those conversations are important.
Yeah, we were just laughing about that, but we were in the context of unions, right? But we were saying, imagine if you were in a relationship, but you could only have a conversation with Antanette present, right? It's not much of a relationship. If your therapist have to always be the mediator in the conversation. So yeah, we have to be empowered to be able to have the conversations, and then you need to address those things in yourself, right, Antanette? I mean, as a leader, we all have to practice self-awareness and to figure out, what is triggering me in this situation right here, right? What is it that's causing me? What is the resistance that I'm feeling right now to dealing with this conflict, dealing with this issue, having this conversation, moving the needle forward? What would you say?
I would think in some instances, some leaders are too friendly, too grinny up kind of thing. As a leader, you're supposed to be firm, concise. You deal with who you're dealing with. You're dealing with staff. My dad, he's deceased now, but he used to say, you go to work, not to make friends. In the course of your work, if you make friends, that's fine, but that's not what you're going there for. And so I always had that in the back of my head, repeating, you go to work to work. You ain't going there to make no friends. Your friends home. You understand? And I mean, he was a stickler for that. And I used to be like, man, come on, man. But I like this person. Daddy say, you like this person? Your friends home. And so when you when you know what your role is, some leaders don't know what their role is. And then there is some upper management. They cracking me up in the comments about grinny up, but some upper management too franny with their managers. And so they allow certain things and they take what that manager says without dealing with staff, if that makes sense. I mean, you guys understand what I'm saying? So you have to be able to be the boss. That's what you is. Be boss. And as long as you're boss, then you deal with everybody on the same level. So,
you have to be able to hear both sides.
Right.
If you're already going into the situation biased, then
you said we're going to have problems.
It's not an even playing field, right?
Right.
So I'll start with Nakia, and then I would love for Ricardo to jump in on this, where we talk about the systems, the processes, the accountability that we need to create. And HR owns this for the most part, I would say, right? By creating policies. We would typically have a grievance policy, or, we'd have codes of conduct, other things like that that help to govern behavior, create the parameters in which people have to work. And then there should be, a process that people could follow if there is a concern or if there is a situation. Who do I go to? How do I deal with it? How will it be dealt with? So Nakia, let's kick it off. What are some of the HR policies and processes that organizations should have in place to protect employees?
So I'll just give an example of an ethics line. So most global companies have where some people do not prefer to speak with people locally. They can opt to make complaints anonymously to an ethics line where the matter is addressed if they feel as though it won't be fairly dealt with, in their local unit. That's an option I see that is available often in the global markets, and the situations are addressed. Everyone is investigated. The results of the investigations are shared, and people feel comfortable doing it that way. Now, the preferred way is definitely to reach out to your manager if there's a concern, and if it's not resolved at that level, then you go above that. But making sure that you have clear policies of your steps, the timelines, these things should happen, making sure that these things are addressed in a timely manner also, because, if someone is being bullied in the workplace and they report it and they have to wait so long for this matter to be addressed, all this time is passing by, it's over their head, what's going to come out of it? Is this situation going to be resolved? It's so important for us to address these matters in a timely fashion and be fair to all parties. And sometimes we talked about, some managers taking, a liking to one employee versus the other. We have to also be unbiased in our approach as we administer whatever, discipline that we have to administer. So that's just a couple of examples as to processes, but making sure that everybody's trained and knows who to go to, what should happen, the timelines, and all of the resources available to get help from the organization.
Yes, good. Ricardo, let's take that a little further now. So Nakia mentioned conducting investigations and being fair and all of those things, and timely, which is very important, particularly if it's, as you mentioned, a situation where someone is feeling bullied or harassed in some way, if they feel unsafe, right? You want to make sure that you are dealing with things quickly. Sometimes investigations can tend to drag on, right? So what are some things that we can do to ensure that these workplace investigations are fair, as mentioned, that they're timely, and they're also confidential? That's a big one as well, right?
Yeah. So I think firstly you need to establish, and something that I did, establish a timeline that with my team as it relates to when we need to action. If a complaint comes in, how soon do we action it, and what's the timeline in resolving it, right? In most cases, our um, goal was less than 7 days, 5 to 7 days. We want to have an investigation wrapped up. Now, there are some that took very long, but we made an effort to ensure that we would wrap majority of our investigations up, complaints up within 5 to 7 days, which I believe was quite reasonable. Um, to ensure that it's timely, so you have to establish the timeline depending on the kinds of investigations and stick to it, right? Action it from the minute it's reported to human resources, what happens next, et cetera, et cetera. For confidentiality for those working in that space, it's important that you practice that, but also ensure that the relevant individuals do sign, to ensure that they're not disclosing confidential information. And I will give an example of one time I was working on a case and it was very confidential. So I took this on myself. I didn't share it with my team. And the a team member in the operation said someone from my team was in a public space talking about the investigation. And as soon as or the outcome of it or specifics about the investigation. So when I got the information, I called a meeting immediately. And the first question I asked them was, are you aware of of an investigation going on regarding this person? No. So were you in a public space having a conversation about an ongoing investigation that you say that you're not aware of? And the short of the long is, someone external to the company was also involved with the situation, and that person was a close friend of hers, and so they confided in her about some things, and she was in the workplace speaking about that. And so it got back to the employee who was involved in that, and they assumed that that information came from human resources, whereas I was tight-lipped with that. And so I made it quite clear that this is a highly confidential. In fact, because it's involving another team member and some of the details, you should know better, right? You should know better. You work with me, you work in this space where we see this kinds of information. It should not be shared. And there was, I would say, a caution as well as, a reminder of what is expected behavior. And I had to make that employee aware that the information that it was not leaked from internal, if that makes sense. So timely, ensuring that people are confidential, and you calling that stuff out immediately, not allowing to fester so people believe that this is acceptable. It's not, right? And we're held to a higher standard even if we don't believe it or not. People expect that HR be confidential, even though they say that HR isn't. The expectation is that we will be, and we have to model that kind of behavior. And so I can't remember what your last point was outside of timely, confidential, and it was something else.
Fair.
And fair. Yeah, being fair, like ensuring that you have the full scope of information before making a decision, right? Ensuring that you speak to all parties involved. If there is footage, if there is other reports, whatever documentation that you need, ensuring that you have all of that in front of you before making a decision on anything. The evidence or the facts as they are will determine what the outcome is. And there have been times where the evidence could not substantiate a claim, right? And which is unfortunate, right? In those cases, however, that need to be communicated to the employee, but we still have to ensure that the employee is safe, which may means moving to a different location if you can, right? Which may means separating that person from the shift of a colleague so that they don't have to interact regularly in a particular way. It may means we have to come up with some unique ways of ensuring that all of our team members are safe. And it depends on what the operation allows.
A couple interesting questions in the chat. You wanted to jump in, Antanette, and then we'll go to those.
Sure. You talked about bullying, and that was in one of the questions, but I wanted to touch on it when it's management, that's the bully. You have certain situations where it's the senior person who is the bully. Simmone mentioned earlier about walking in and people stop talking. So you automatically know there's something. I will share because I've experienced it. I worked on the family island. I used to work for government. Let me just get that out there. I worked for social services, which is hell. I then moved on to another area. Moving on the island for government is something in itself. And so you're driftwood. You ain't supposed to be there. So when the supervisor was the one, the instigator, if that's the word I could use, like major bullying. And I remember at one point during my time there, no joke, I used to snotty nose cry on my husband because I didn't want to go, because I literally had fear of what could have happened to me. We had to deal with some situations because of where I was working. When they couldn't get to me, they got to my husband. And so something happened, and the first thing I was told, I was called from head office, from the assistant director. Oh, we got a call that XYZ happened. He don't work for government. So how? Why? And I told the other supervisor, I said, I can assure you this has nothing to do with him and everything to do with me being here. Long story short, 5 days my husband was locked up, only to go get a lawyer, go to the people them to be told, oh, he could go. No sorry, no apology. He could go. And so I endured because they didn't want me on their island. That is an island, like I've told friends, I will never, ever, ever set foot back on. I don't even care. I would never, ever go back to. But it's ruthless. And the supervisors did nothing. And I'm like, how? Because I wasn't used to that. Like I said, I worked private before going off to school. I worked private in the States. People don't do that. You understand? So I'm listening to Mr. Mitchell going, company never bring you on to do some training, because I think they need you. I ain't lying. They need you. I'm being honest. All fun and jokes aside, they need you. You talked about exit interview. I only wished, like I really wish they did, because you caused a good employee to leave. Need nobody ask me why? Why was needed? Why did you leave? You need to send them a proposal, eh? Yeah, that. Wait,
You, the Antanette, it was a regular part of the operation. If an employee is leaving, it's important for us to have that conversation. The same way we wowed you to get you into the organization and pull out all of this stuff. If you're leaving, it is our responsibility to see you off in a particular way and to get feedback. Some of the feedback is really good, right? Because everything about the company isn't bad. There are some things, though how small, may be good. And it's important for us to highlight those, right? Highlight those relationships, those people, because that's important. We know who our shining stars are. But then it's also important for us to have information on where we may need to look a bit deeper, right? And where we're not doing so well. And to compile that information, if it's ongoing, and provide recommendations up. And I would tell you, it may not be followed, but you are doing your part. Everyone, the decision makers are aware of what's happening. And if they don't make a decision, then the company will suffer for it. And if you see it as important, and something Nakia mentioned earlier about how we, in a nutshell, we invest so much in the client experience and not in the employee experience, right? We don't, and that's sad. And so it's an eye opener in many cases, but it's information that leadership need to know, and you can make recommendations. And if it's ongoing, eventually, as you see, the only people staying are those who don't care. And then you realize that we need to do something, right? um, Very early on, I said this in a training as well, that we we present ourselves as our companies to people, in so many lights. And when you get into the company, realize that people lied. It Our values don't align. The employer value proposition was a lie. You don't offer anything. It's not a safe space, etc. And then also, when you see those exit interviews, it show you how far off you are from your values, because what is consistently tolerated is pretty much what the company's
That's
culture
your
and
culture, exactly.
yeah. So,
Sorry,
Mm.
Ricardo.
oh, sorry, Ms. Forbes, go ahead.
Oh, and just to add to that, so a lot of times we have to look at manager effectiveness. So what we did in an organization, we did annual engagement surveys, and we looked at the trends. And so if you were a manager, we expected your scores every year to be increasing, and that was tied to your performance. And of course, we were pay for performance. So you wanted to do better. So after these surveys, the team would come together and come up with action plans as to how can we be better with communication? How could we be better with leadership trust? All of the things that we wanted to improve on. We got the teams involved in coming up with the action plans as to how we can be better in and the overall survey. So tying the performance, the manager effectiveness to the performance proved to help managers to be better at leading their teams, being fair, communicating better. That was something that helped in that regard.
Yeah, and it goes back to accountability, right? And you get what you measure, or however that saying goes, and so if people know that I'm going to be reviewed on that this is an important aspect of my responsibilities, then hopefully they would take it more seriously. and so we have to put all of these safeguards in place. It's not a one size fits all solution. As you can tell, it's multi-layered, and there are multiple things that need to happen in order for the whole to work, and so that's where, let me put this good plug in. I hear y'all and see y'all in the chat talking about, oh, these people ain't doing exit interviews. Who does that? But progressive organizations and progressive HR professionals will do those things, right? So y'all need to get yourself some good HR professionals in these organizations to actually level up. And I have to say, I want to really publicly applaud the HR professionals in the Bahamas. There are a core group that are really doing some amazing things in our organizations. We have come from a long way, and we are implementing great initiatives and strategies. Really, honestly and truly, I seriously mean it. From, the entire life cycle of the employee, which is how we attract them, how we bring them on board, how we orient them, how we train them, how we develop them, up until that exit interview, whether that is they resign or they retire or however, we separate from that employee. I think HR professionals are doing a really good job in trying to elevate the profession and the function. Two different things, right? And a lot of times the struggles that we have in the organization is that people don't understand the function of HR. So we stuck in a very old model that we are just paper pushing, hire, fire, people here know, right? HR is so much more and can really impact the organization in a very positive way. So I want to address the two questions in the chat. I mean, Andrea is just going off in this chat, right? But there are a couple of questions that she asked that I would want us to address in this forum. One, which I think is very interesting, about a statute of limitations on when an employee can lodge a complaint. That is a very important question, because are you bringing up a complaint from last year? Is that fair? What say you, HR professionals? Is this something that we ought to have a policy about?
I
Well,
think, go ahead, Forbes.
no, you go. I'll pick.
Yeah, I think it depends honestly on the kind of complaint, right? And is it a complaint about someone moving a book, or is it some serious complaint around harassment, bullying, anything that's makes the individual feel unsafe, or is either presenting harm to the person or the company's possessions and assets, right? I think we have to understand that it in those cases, I believe, if a complaint is lodged, it merits being looked into. Because time has passed, you may not find significant evidence to make a decision. But if a complaint is lodged, it's important that we take that complaint, we note it, and we do our due diligence with it, right? So like I said, sometimes because of the time frame, you may not have significant evidence, but you have to do your part. It was brought to your attention, you look into it, and you kind of present whatever the findings are, update the complainant regarding the findings of that investigation to what extent you can.
I agree, and I would just add that, and I would encourage employees just to report whatever it is right away. Don't hold on, to anything. Just as we example job accidents, we want you to report them right away. It's just an example, but I would just encourage people to just, address it as soon as possible.
Yeah, and just a bit more, if it's interpersonal relational issues, you will find that this may have happened a year ago, but there may be a pattern with that particular person that this add to, maybe a pattern of incidences that happened prior to a year ago, and so you're just that you're seeing the history of this employee, that this employee probably is problematic, right? You probably thought you would have gotten over it, but the first instance of that negative interaction was a year ago. You tried to work through it. It didn't get better, so now you're bringing it to our attention, right? So reporting it, always report it if you want to, no matter how late it is, and HR should look into it, and we'll do our due diligence with that.
Yes, absolutely. And so our time has run up and gone quick as that, as they say here in the Bahamas. And so I want to ask each of you if leaders or even employees could take one action tomorrow at 9 a.m. or whenever they report to work to begin shifting from toxic to trust and respect, what would that action be? What could we do differently? As Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see. It's very easy for us to blast leaders and blast HR and blame the government and blame the sun for shining too bright and the moon for not being bright enough, right? So what can we do? How can we take personal responsibility in our own sphere of influence to create change in this area? Who's starting first?
So I'll answer from a mental health perspective. I feel that if an employee realizes that they are on the brink, whatever that brink is, to ask for the time. There's time to regroup. I know we don't do mental health days, and there was a discussion recently in the papers about mental health days, and someone asked the question, where's the money supposed to come from to pay for the mental health day? I'm really withdrawn. I try to be really decent on social media, and I was like, well, dummy, from the same money you gonna have to pay the staff if they end up sick. I mean, common sense. But in all honesty, I feel like as an employee from a mental health stance, if you feel like you're teetering, if you feel like you're overwhelmed, if you feel like it's too much, and there is a relationship with management that you can say, I got stuff going on, I need a minute. I think that's important for employees to be given the leeway to take a minute, to take a day off, or to take 2 days off, just to regroup, reset, and then where their minds are clearer. Sometimes people just need a minute. As you know, Simmone, I touch a whole lot on loss and grief, and a lot of people get confused thinking that loss and grief is only with someone dying. Far from it. There's so many other areas that precipitate grief in people's lives. And so having that understanding that something may be off, being able to verbalize, I just need a minute to put myself together, and being allowed that time will go a long way in changing the atmosphere in some instances in our workplaces.
Yes, I put in the chat that there was this lady, she did a little, these little skit things that they do. And she was calling in, or I should say calling out. So she called her manager and she said, I have mood poisoning. And so on the other side, the person was saying, you mean food poisoning? She was like, no, I have mood poisoning. And if I come in, this is very contagious. And you could catch my bad mood. So I think I just need to stay away today. It's funny, but it's not funny, right? And
Exactly.
it's true, right? If
Yeah.
you feel, and this is where the education has to come in, because people are still struggling. The people are still divided on these mental health days. We as professionals understand the need for them, but a lot of people are still fighting it because, Andrea, I could just put her in the naughty corner, but people are still fighting it because they're like, what, just toughen up and deal with it, right? You don't need to take time off. You don't need to, take
Um,
that breather, that mental space to get yourself together.
when I worked in the States, I worked with children in state care, in foster care, who had mental health diagnoses, etc. And so we had 2 mental health days per quarter, I think. Look, I used to thank God. It's like, yeah, we gonna need a minute, because before I start to drink, let me take a minute, because it's depending on the work that people are doing, and a lot of us are doing work that's taxing mentally. It takes it when your brain is drained, it filters down to your body, and so that's important. You pay. I feel like you pay for it on one side, or you pay for it on the other side. National insurance, and you still got to pay them because they are sick. So allow the day or two, the day, 1 day per 2 months, or however, 1 day per quarter, or however they want to do it. I think allowing your staff, allowing people to catch themselves, like the old people let me say, goes a long, long way in the workplace, making it conducive for good work to take place.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Very important.
So one thing that I think that leaders can do tomorrow is simple. Just call a team check-in and ask, how's everything going? And really listen, right? Don't just ask the question because you feel as if it's a huddle, it's a team meeting, you have to ask, but listen to what's being said and listen to what's not being said, right? Watch the body language of team members. That give you so many clues, right? People rolling their eyes or slouching, or you can tell so much about if your team is thriving or if they are just going through the motions and want to be done with this check-in. And so I think that tomorrow you can just call, hey, quick check-in, 15 minutes. How's everything going? And listen, practice active listening and make note of what they're saying. And if there are actionable things that you can do, is within your power, then probably try your best to implement those that you can immediately, which could be some quick wins for you and your team, and you may see a little improvement, but over time you'll see more as you begin to address this more in more detail.
Now, let me be devil's advocate. What if you have this check-in in the morning and no one says a word? Because they just either just not that into you, or they like, where you coming from? Asking how we doing. You never cared before,
Yeah.
right? What do you do?
So I think in that case, that will tell you exactly what's happening with the team. And it may means that you will have to have one-on-one conversations, right? People may be a bit more open to speak more privately with you. Maybe the issue isn't necessarily you, it's something that they want to say, but the person is in the room. And so they want more privacy. And so probably moving in that direction. Hopefully that work, and if it doesn't work, it may means that you have to call someone in to help you with uh, re-engaging your team members, right, with some team building, etc. But do your due diligence first and make the best decision after you've gotten sufficient information to move to the next level.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Ricardo. Nikia.
Yes. And I would just say for the leaders, they should just model the behaviors they want to see. Because, sometimes leaders, they're attacking each other, and sometimes that's in the front of, everyone. Then you have some situations where people like to gossip. So shut down gossip when it comes your way. So be civil, be honest, be unbiased in your management style. So it's just you modeling the behavior that you want to see in the organization.
And you cannot go wrong with leading by example ever, right? It always works. So we actually have two gifts to give away tonight, courtesy of our resident comedian in the chat, Andrea Pratt Smith. She is hosting an event on Friday, and she has 2 free tickets. Woo woo! Andrea, do you want to open your mic and tell us about your event on Friday? 60-second version.
Let's do it in 30. We're
All
talking about
right.
we're talking about mental health and wrapping up the day. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please excuse my crazy jokes in the chat. I've had a very long day that's still going. But to tell you about the Bahamas Agile and Project Management Community's professional development day that is happening this Friday, November 7th, starting from 10:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. It's a virtual professional development day where you will be able to network with persons from around the globe. We have a great lineup of very impressive speakers. Our theme is the future of project management, agility, and artificial intelligence. And we have a lot of wonderful prizes. One being where every attendee, if you're not a member of the Scrum Alliance, you actually get a 2 years free membership to the Scrum Alliance to help you with continuous education. And we also have 2 prizes from the University of Maryland for $450 worth of vouchers to get a project management certification. The cost is only $25. Tickets are about to sell out. I'm about to close the ticketing portal. It's $25 for the entire day, and you get to network and spend some time with global professionals from around the world. That's my 30-second spiel. Probably went over time.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And so if you are interested in nabbing your free ticket tonight for this virtual event, and one thing I can tell you about Andrea, it's going to be an international event. She is well connected, well versed in this area of project management and agile. And as she says, we're all project managers because we're all managing multiple things and just getting things done. And so even in that whole reframe, you may think, well, I'm not a project manager, that's not for me. But there are great principles that you can learn to apply to your everyday. And you may be interested in getting a certification. You can train locally with her and take those international exams and do extremely well. And she will not let you go until you pass. I will take that exam, my dear, I shall. So first 2 people to open your mic and tell us what your major takeaway from tonight's session is. You can get yourself a free ticket for Friday's event.
Hi, I'll take it over. Good night, everybody. Excellent panel. One key takeaway was the value of having exit surveys, which will lead to positive change and impact within your corporations. And the other one is be the example that you want to see.
Awesome. Thank you. Dr. Swan Clark is our first winner. And we'll just get your contact information over to Andrea so that you can get your free ticket for Friday's event. Do we have any other takers tonight? Look like Dr. Swan Clark may get to 2 tickets, eh? All right, so the winner is Dr. Swan Clark. Woohoo! And she actually gave 2 takeaways too, so I think she deserves those 2 tickets. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining. And I will just share in closing. I want to thank our panelists tonight, Nikia Forbes, Ricardo Mitchell, and Antanette Anderson for sharing your very honest and very actionable insights. And that's very important for us on this platform because we need to be able to take away things that we can do right away so that we can, again, contribute to the change that we want to see in our environments. I want to leave us with this thought, though, that workplace culture doesn't change overnight. It's not built overnight and it can't change overnight. It's what we repeatedly do. But it changes when we decide as leaders that we want an environment that is thriving, that is important to focus on well-being, on fairness, and on accountability. I want to say thank you to our audience for joining us in our Limitless Leaders monthly webinar. And please continue to join us, follow us. You can go to www.leadwithsimmone.com so that you can stay connected. Thank you to the members of our community. We have a Limitless Leaders community on WhatsApp. And so if you'd like to join the community for more camaraderie and support, because again, where is a safe space for leaders to go, right? And so we have a WhatsApp community. Thank you to our members who are online tonight, and also to Nikia, who is a member as well. And this is what we do at the webinar is we want to highlight some of the great leaders that are in our community. Andrea is also a part of our community, and our community manager was online. I don't know if she's still online, Chidi. Thank you so much for your support and everything that you do to help us in this work. Yes, she's on. And I have to shout out Chidi because she is, I think, 5 hours ahead of us. So it's very, very early in her morning. So I appreciate your commitment to joining us and giving your support at probably 2 a.m. your time. So thank you very much, everyone. And we'll see you again next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Back to work. Back to work. Oh, I'm tired.
It'll soon be over.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm gonna